And we're back.
Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
First, I should apologize for the brief hiatus that we went on. We had some technical difficulties last episode, but thanks for our listeners for being so patient, and thanks for our guest today, who was supposed to be our guest last episode. He kindly rescheduled his entire life to make sure that he could make it back onto the podcast. It is the No Direction Zone and Paizo Zone, Louise Loza. Hello, Louise.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
We're very happy to have you back. Yeah, so sorry about last week. What did you end up doing?
Spending time with my family.
Well, there you go. Oh, that's right. It was Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Well, that sounds nice.
Yeah, it was a good time. So.
Nothing.
Now, we had you on earlier this year, and we were talking about how you are handling the bulk of the duties on the player companion line, you and Eleanor, correct?
Correct, yep.
And now it's almost the end of the year. It's almost the end of the player companion line as we know it. How does it feel?
It's bittersweet. I'm making sure we do our best to get in as many options for as many players and character themes as possible, and getting in those last little, oh, this would have been a cool thing to put in the game, or this is a cool thing to put in the game, those last little ideas. And I think we're doing a good job, but that also means, hey, that we're getting them in. That means it's wrapping up. It's kind of the end of the road here.
You know, you're basically the last 1E developer standing, right?
No, not officially. So there are 4 developers right now for Pathfinder. Just the main, outside of Pathfinder Society, organized player stuff. There's me and Eleanor, who handled the campaign setting and the player companions. There's Ron Lundeen, who's handling the last adventure path for first edition, the Tyrant's Grasp. And there's a recent re-edition of Patrick Rennie, who is handling the back matter for that.
I did not. Patrick's back? When did that happen?
Just 2 weeks ago. In fact, there was a blog post about it last week.
Yep.
Oh, wow. No, I totally missed that. Well, that's cool.
It was a really cool blog post. It was like, I went around the world and found all sorts of awesome stuff, and now home.
So Patrick developed my entry in Giants Unchained, not Unchained, but Revisited, Giants Revisited. Yep. So it's just cool that he's back. I had not.
He was my first developer when I submitted my first bit of Pathfinder freelance for Paizo.
That's awesome. And look
kinda,
how far you've come.
Yeah, I kind of took his spot, but now he's back.
Uh-oh. Dun, dun, dun.
I don't think there's any bad blood that I'm aware of.
That's what they all say.
So what are some last ideas that you want to make sure were included in first edition?
Some of them are stuff that hasn't come out just yet. So in the upcoming player companions, but there's a few ideas we've had for different ways of handling equipment, or specific parts of the game that have been left untouched for literally the entire time since the game has come out. In particular, this is something we've talked about. We've announced all of our player companions up through June, which is all of our player companions at this point. The last one there is called Chronicle of Legends, and one of the things that we put up in the solicitation text is that it'll feature new capstones for classes. Oh, so when you hit 20th level, you have a cool, big, strong special ability. Hey, let's get you some new ones that don't require a whole new archetype to replace everything else out on your class.
Yeah,
or if you're something like a cleric, maybe let's give you a capstone in the first place.
Oh man, the poor cleric was always so left out in first edition for all the cool new toys that all the other classes got to play with.
And capstone is a term that I remember being thrown around a lot during the original 1E playtest, but it's true. I have not heard talked about capstone other than when a new class comes out and debate about whether the capstone's good or not, but not in any kind of official rule capacity.
No, there hasn't been any mechanical weight to the term capstone until this last companion, where we're saying, hey, this is what a capstone means, and this is what it affects.
And is that something we can go into? at all, like mechanically? How do you handle, like, is it just suddenly here is a term that applies to rules that already exist, now here's new rules that affect that term?
Yeah, it's basically going to say, hey, your 20th level ability that you tend to get that's really strong, we're calling that a capstone. This is how a capstone works, and this is how you're about to replace your capstone that we just told you how it works.
No, we didn't bring you on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pam. I've cut you off twice.
Well, those are like, the capstones are really powerful, and we always have fun talking about them, but it's always like with this like distant, oh sure, that's really cool, but you're never going to actually use it because, you know, at 20th level, most campaigns don't make it there. Even most adventure paths don't make it there. And then even if you do make it there, it's usually like the end of this character, the end of the campaign. So you get this really sweet ability that you'll get to use like twice. But it's really cool that it's getting some attention, because if you're going to only get it to use it twice, well, you know, it better be some bang for the buck.
Yeah, and that's something that we've been trying to make sure gets some more attention, is the last big hurrah for a campaign. I feel like a lot of people might be going through their last adventure path or the last big campaign for first edition. Obviously, a lot of people are going to stick around with the current edition and play through that, and we also want to give them those options. But for example, Return of the Rune Lords takes you all the way through 20th level, but it also is one of the plans there was to make sure you don't just get to 20th level, do one last big fight, and call it quits. You know, you'll have some time to play with that. So that'll be something you can use as new capstone stores. Hey, we just hit 20th level, we have some time to play around with them. Let's see how ridiculous things are. Pretty ridiculous, it turns out.
And the idea to do the book that has the capstone abilities as the capstone of the player companion line for 1E, is that all like thematically deliberate?
Yeah, there's a big theme there with giving a lot of, hey, you're high level, you're wrapping up campaigns. A lot of that is the thought process going into these. So let's give you some higher level options. Let's give you some stronger spells. Let's give you some really strong equipment, things like that. There's still options for lower level characters and the like, but that seems to be the big theme there. It's called Chronicle of Legends. You got to be a legendary character, and these are the legendary things that you can do with these options.
I love that so much. Most of the time, the last book is just the last one that they thought to schedule before, you know, like as far as Dungeons and Dragons history and Pathfinder First Edition, like the hardcover, the last one being the Planar Handbook, didn't feel like it was a major end to that line. This one really does.
Well, hopefully live up to your expectations. One fun little thing we decided to do with that, thanks to a suggestion from one of the other developers, Ron, is to put the capstones as literally the last options in the book.
Yes. That makes me excited, and I don't know why, but it's like, that's how you have to do this.
Yeah, and also thanks to that, the capstone section, we literally have at least one option for every core and base class that is in the game.
Amazing.
Well, then you guys need to further this out and make sure that at Gen Con, when people are picking up their bags, it's the bottom book in every stack.
So that while they're going through their new subscription, they're like,
it's
all right,
literally the very last thing.
The last new thing I see.
We'll see if we can coordinate that. That sounds like maybe it'll be worth it for the one person that realizes, oh, hey, that's kind of fun. The last thing is that first edition thing.
We have a question from chat. Oilant Green he says that player companions are usually linked to Galarian. Are these new capstones going to be tied to specific Galarian flavor?
So the theme of the book is presenting a lot of these options as, hey, they're rooted in Galarian. The capstones in particular don't say, hey, you're, let's say, a member of the Arc Lords, you know, of Next, and that means you have the most powerful magic. Here's your capstone ability, or you are a paladin who endured in the world wound, and here's another. No, it's nothing like that. They're more generic. We're actually we're doing a few different things with those, in that some of these capstones aren't class exclusive.
Oh?
They are. So, for example, one of these capstones could be, hey, if you are a spellcaster, here's a capstone for you. Or if you have sneak attack dice, here's a capstone for you. Or if you have at least X number of combat feats, or an animal companion, or an eidolon, here's how you do it. So that way you can potentially be someone that is taking a capstone that isn't necessarily just tied to, oh, I'm the fighter, I only do weapon stuff, here's some weapon things. No, it turns out now I have a band of heroes and misfits that follow me, and that's my capstone. I have super leadership.
Cool. I'm curious to see, like, how is that going to be laid out? How is it going to... You're speaking in very broad terms, but how do you know specifically if you qualify for one of these capstones?
They will have a little prerequisite that's, here's the capstone name, little parentheses, must have sneak attack dice, or must be able to cast spells, or something like that.
Is there any reason not to make these just a feat that you only get at 20th level?
I think the idea is that these new capstones are mini archetypes that just replace your 20th level ability. Okay. And some classes don't have an ability that they get at 20th level. Mm-hmm. For example, Witch gets Grand Hexes, or Alchemist gets Grand Discoveries, which are equivalent to capstone. We just, hey, here's a new Grand Discovery, here's a new Grand Hex, something like that.
Now, since I'm playing so much Fallout 76 lately with James on the network, I'm imagining now, since you said they're little mini archetypes, the little tiny Pathfinder bobbleheads that you grab.
Yeah.
This feels like a book that mythic content would fit into. Is that something you revisited?
We do visit mythic content, not in that book.
Oh.
There will be mythic content in the player companion line coming up.
Heroes of Clarion?
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that was an easy guess.
It's kind of easy to deduce a lot of things based on the fact that we've announced all the books, and most of them have their product descriptions already.
I'm glad mythic content is getting some love again, because I was really worried the only place we'd ever see it again was monsters.
Now, there's a whole spell casting type that requires some help with getting plugged into mythic, so we're making sure those classes get their love as well.
So you were being deliberately vague there, right?
I can be, yes.
I will have no follow-up questions for that then. What is Heroes of Clarion? It feels very similar thematically to Chronicles of Legend, at least based on the title.
So Chronicles of Legend, you are big, strong, powerful characters, and Heroes of Clarion, there are heroes beyond the Inner Sea. We have a whole big, giant world in our campaign setting that, we've dabbled a little bit here and there in our APs or other adventures and scenarios and the like, but we want to show you a taste of what a fighting style from Arcadia might look like, or what kind of magic they might use down in Garund or Vudra, for example. So these are options that are broken up by areas of the world and give you different things based on where you're looking. So you have an Arcadia section, you have the Inner Sea has a little bit, and then you have Garund and the Dragon Empires and the like.
No, I feel this one is just a collection of the notes of, like, if we ever do Mwangi Expands, here's options I want. And now it's like, well, we're never going to do this on its own, but 50 of these together.
Yeah, it's very much here's us dipping our toe in the pool for what we think things might look like, and also kind of the stories we might want to tell later on with that. So if we talk about this is the type of particular magic you might see in Garund, that might inform the kind of magic that we end up using in stories later on, or be informed based on what we already have and that we want to expand upon. We've done that kind of thing before, where a novel or other campaign setting book will mention something, and then later it will become a player option.
Bard Wannabe in chat is going back to the mythic option we were talking about, and he's predicting it's the psychic you were talking about.
Yeah, that's a pretty good call.
Cool. Param, do you want to mention to people that if they watch us live, they can interact with us in a different way?
Yes, indeed. If you're watching us live, and tune in during Wednesdays at 9 o'clock p.m., either for this show or No Direction Beyond, the sister show on the network, you can join us on our live chat. And if you ask any questions during the live chat, we will try to get them answered during the show. So please, we would like to hear any questions you have for us or Luis or anything else.
And there's one more player companion that's up for pre-order, so we might as well cover all three of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wilderness Origins. Am I confused? I thought there was already a Wilderness Origins.
There have been several Wilderness themed player companions, like Heroes of Wild, I believe, was the most recent one, which came out before Ultimate Wilderness, and it just so happened to line up that it kind of worked well, but it didn't have anything like options for the shifter or the new races that we put in there.
I thought that was weird.
Yeah. Just, sometimes things are staggered in such a way that they don't come out at the time that we would like. So we've, decided, hey, we got to get those options out there and give the shifter some love, give the Vine Leshies lots of love.
So this is it then. This is the one that's the follow-up to Ultimate Wilderness.
Yeah, much like Advanced Class Origins or Mythic Origins or Cult Origins, yeah.
And I know that it's no secret the shifter did not scratch the itch that most people wanted that class to. Is this going to be like a little in-game backdoor errata? We've been doing a lot of... I say a lot because to me it feels like a lot. Because usually, a class will come out and then see something trickling in here and there. We've been making sure to give Shifter a lot of love, even leading up to this. Shifter got some love in the Distant Realms campaign setting book. It had an archetype that I think was pretty popular. There is some stuff actually in the Martial Arts Handbook. There's something in the Construct book, actually, of all places. So there's been some stuff here and there, but this is the big one. This is where we give a big chunk of the word count to the shifter. And there's some things that we're adding in that I feel might help people, might win some people over with the shifter in terms of how the class plays and the like. So for example, one thing, shifter claws by default are always, you're doing, I believe, slashing damage. Swiping claws. We are giving some options to every shifter major form. I forgot what it's called, major shifter form. That major aspects. There you go. If you play a bear, sometimes it would make more sense for you to have a bite attack as a bear than it would to have claws. Or if you're playing bull, it might make more sense to have a gore or hoof attack. So we have options for you to swap those out, swap your claws for something else that works thematically for the particular aspect that you've taken on. That also lets players get different damage types as well. So, hey, I don't want to do slashing. I want to do piercing, or I want to do bludgeoning. You have your options depending on what animal you're playing. And it also mentions that there's going to be a dragon shifter.
Yes. The dragon shifter, if you think of the dragon bloodlines for the sorcerer or the blood rager, it's similar to that, where you kind of latch onto a particular dragon type and then get abilities based on that type of dragon, like a breath weapon and resistances and immunities and things like that. And then later on, instead of becoming animals, you will take forms of these dragons.
Well, that is going to be a fan favorite for sure. Dragon options always work over well for PCs.
Param?
Yes?
Are you implying something?
No, I'm saying
Okay.
it would be
No, I thought
super
maybe you were
popular because, dragons are great.
Dragons are cool. People like dragons.
Yeah.
I like dragons.
I mean,
No, sorry.
one of the
I
best
thought you were
third-party...
implying that there was balance issues, but...
No.
I read into something that you were saying.
No. I mean, it's going to... I don't envy the how hard it's going to be for Luis's team to put together dragon balance and turn it into dragons, because, man, dragons are powerful. But I have faith, Luis. You can balance that, right?
Well, I hope so. It's already gone to print.
Oh, see? Yeah. That's been taken care of.
Yeah, it's already fixed. Past Luis solved all those problems already.
Has it all gone to print then?
No. All of the text is in for all of the books, and for example, Wilderness Origins is hitting people's bookshelves next month, I believe. So that's getting ready to go out very soon. Heroes of Clarion just wrapped up completely and is going to print very soon, or it might already be at print. And Chronicles of Legends is done for my part. I've done all the development work. It's just a matter of hitting layout and then going to print. So it's pretty much right at the end there.
Well, this sort of ties into Biscuit Goat's question that you can't answer, so we're just going to acknowledge that he asked it, or they asked it. Do you know what your next job will be once things switch over next year? And will the player companion line continue, or is all of that shrouded in mystery? I'm guessing shrouded in mystery?
Mystery. We have our plans for what's going on with our setting and player material going into 2nd edition that we will discuss more when the time is right.
But it's safe to say that
I'm already working on things for the future.
Okay.
In 2nd edition.
Yeah, it's safe to say you're not just twiddling your thumbs till Gen Con of next year.
No, not at all.
Okay. I mean, if that's the case, man, we can sign you up for some more blogs on the network, but all right.
So there's 2 ways you could have gone, I figure, with the end of the well, not the end, but like as you're winding down these lines that are so Clarion focused. You could have either gone all crunch like you have for the player companion line, where you're trying to get as many options out, or you could have gone crunch light like they did during the 1st edition playtest, where these books were basically system neutral for like several of them were. So why was the decision to go, these are 1st edition books and they're going to be done when they're done, instead of these are things you can read about our world as you're waiting to see how you're going to be playing in our world in the new edition?
Well, I can't speak to that entirely, considering I wasn't around when those decisions were being made 10 years ago. But I think part of it is this time around, Clarion is really well established. And at the time, having a book where it's easier to just put in words and not have to tie any mechanics to it is probably more of a boon than we don't really need that at this point. We know our setting, it's well cemented at this point. We can just expand on it with the mechanics here and there. And I think that, and again, I can't speak 100% onto that, but it might have been there could have been some wariness about, will people want to hop over? Maybe they see a book that just is not lots of interesting flavor, and then then you got them on the hook, and then you can reel them in with the cool, interesting mechanics in the new game. Also, there's a lot of, considering how long the game and this general rules that has been around, there's just a lot of stuff that someone like me and the other developers and people here internally, just like, we've always wanted to see this. Now's our chance to do that. Let's make sure we get that in. So just kind of we're still excited for this game. We love this game. We've been playing it for so long. Obviously, we have a big attachment, and we want to make sure we just have all that cool stuff that we've been waiting for in the game get in before the door closes on that.
All right. Well, there's some options that I was excited about when we were talking about the last time earlier this year, but you couldn't go into details on it, and that is the Martial Arts Handbook.
Oh, yes.
So this is going to be the chunk of what we're going to be talking about right now, because I am very excited about this book. I'm kind of surprised it exists. What was the thinking going into what a martial arts handbook would be?
Well, first and foremost, I will explain a little bit about the process about how this book came to be. And
I like
how
that you're waxing on, waxing off.
Yes, it's very important. I stay on theme. When I joined up in January, there were obviously already things on the schedule that I hopped on board and helped flesh out or take over and then get out the door. So those are things like the Plane Hopper's Handbook and Blood of the Ancients and the other books leading up to this. So there's a lot of times when we're creating new books, we get together, we decide, what would go well in this book, throw a bunch of spaghetti at a wall, and then figure out what sticks. And Martial Arts Handbook was already on the schedule, and we knew we were going to do it. I'm excited for martial arts options in general, so I was excited for that. This is actually the first book where I felt confident enough in the process that I'm like, okay, I'm kind of starting 100% ready to go from the get-go with this book. So I was really invested in making sure this book would be exactly what I would want were I not working here. It would have everything that I would want to play with my characters. The fun thing about this is it's very easy to just flip through a book or go to Wikipedia and say, look at these 10 martial arts. Okay, let's put them in the game. Great, done. And we did a little bit of that. We found interesting things, martial arts and techniques and the like, that would go well in the book. But we also thought about, hey, we have our own setting. What kind of things would develop based in a world where there's magic, or where there are monsters and all the different fantasy things that are here? How would a martial art develop differently than it would have in our real world? So we got a chance to play around and kind of expand a tiny bit on the world through the showing off, hey, here's the different techniques that people are using from all over.
One of the things I like about it is that it feels like this is the book for anyone that looked at Ultimate Combat and was critical of how all the style feats had unarmed combat as a prerequisite. It's like, there's more to martial arts than just unarmed combat. There's more to martial arts than just the monk. Mm-hmm. This is like, pick a class. Odds are there's an archetype in here that turns them into some kind of martial artist.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to go for. It's not to say that unarmed strikes don't deserve love. I love monk. It's one of my favorite classes in the game. It's probably why I was so excited for this book. But yes, fighting with more than just your fists is something that has been a tradition for thousands of years now. You know, I know people wanting something like a good way to fight with spears, or just more options for grappling that don't just involve, hey, my numbers are bigger and then I win. I want to, toss people around and do more interesting, exciting things. So we were definitely looking beyond just the unarmed strike. And one thing I was doing with, we were making sure we were doing with this book, is to not have it feel like there's wasted space. Not to say that I don't appreciate the spells and spell casting options for the spellcasters in something like Ultimate Combat, but if I'm playing a monk or a fighter, that's an entire section of the book that I can't use as a character. So we just limited that down to as it make it as easy as possible for someone to get any of these other options outside of, hey, this archetype requires a specific class.
Well, whenever I've reviewed a player companion book, usually my comments will be, I'm surprised at just how dense it is. They've really managed to pack so much into these small books. And with that in mind, this is one of the most dense player companion books I've ever seen. Like, it is just packed with options. It is unreal how much you fit into this book.
Yeah, there's the little table in the very intro section that tells you all the different feats and stuff that are there. That was not big enough. I had to trim that down in such a way that says new style feats and new options here. There's just so many things. And I think part of that is our awesome freelancers. With our outline that we send out in the assignments for these freelancers, a lot of it was just, hey, we want some grapple options. Give me some grapple options. Or, hey, we want a monk that does only non-lethal damage. Give us that. And then didn't give much direction in hopes that it would inspire and give lots of awesome results, which it definitely did.
Now, you, like Ryan said, you all really packed everything in. I mean, like, the art choices and even the framing on this book are minimized compared to what a usual player companion would get. And it looks like the purpose of that was to cram as much text in here as physically possible. And I'm not sure that this thing doesn't quite defy the laws of a printing press in order to fit even more text in here. But I do want to call attention to whose idea was it for the inside cover stretching piece, because that thing is beautiful, especially when you get down to Lenny.
That was definitely Eleanor's baby first, and I mean, it was her idea. Hey, we should put in some stretching or like some katas or something in the inside. And then we immediately ran with it and just decided, okay, what would be fun little things to put in there? Well, of course, maybe we should give Ezrin in there. He's got to have his hands stretched out for all his somatic components, and then having cat pose is obviously really fun. So yeah, it was Eleanor's doing, and we had a lot of fun with it. We've had a lot of fun with the art orders for lots of these books, actually, in the recent days.
Well, I always think that the inside cover of the player companion line sets the tone for the rest of the book, and this is a great one for that. It's minimal words, it's a lot of art. It really doesn't add anything to my game, but it adds something to my reading pleasure, and that's cool. But I don't want to skip over the cover.
Because man, that cover is amazing.
Oh, I love this cover. I think it is in my top 3 covers of art that we've ordered since I've been here. At least that I've been officially part of the art order. This cover is wonderful. It turned out better than I could have ever imagined. The basic idea was, hey, if you play Street Fighter or some other fighting game, you usually end up in the middle of a street surrounded by a lot of people cheering you on, and we wanted to replicate that here. And we thought it'd be fun to throw in some of the other iconics watching. And I think the best tune hanging out on Zova's shoulders and cheering on and doing her little replication of Kess with her little flame figure.
Oh man, I didn't even notice that the flame was Kess. It is perfect. I just appreciated this without that little detail. Holy crap. I mean, I really hope that this makes it into a poster print someday, because this is the kind of thing I want, like 24 by 36 on my wall.
You should email customer service or put it on the boards, and we'll see what we can do.
So this is some of the things I read into what I see in this cover. First of all, you've got the Brawler and the Monk in the foreground, which are the classes you would expect in the martial arts handbook. But the fact that the background is loaded with other classes, it's kind of the book's way of saying, but don't think this is just Brawlers and Monks.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were aiming for. Fighter and investigator. The investigator in particular was one that we were like, hey, this is not your traditional martial artist, but it's still someone that fights. Let's show you that. The same thing with the kineticist.
Well, when we were talking about the development of the investigator, it was constantly going back to the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movie, and specifically the fight scene at the very beginning of it. So it makes sense that he fits into this book. I also just want, I love how brutal the Brawler's punch is. It's blowing up that pole. There's technique to it, but it's mostly just raw force, whereas the Monk is just capably dodging it, because the Monk is technique and the Brawler is not.
I think I've stared at this thing for minutes on end, constantly while we were helping get this book put together. So I love it. I'm looking forward to some of the other covers that you'll be seeing here in the future.
Oh, we're not done talking about this cover, Luis.
I know, but I'm just saying. If you think this is great, I think this is great, and there's also great stuff coming up too.
Ooh.
All right. Yeah, no, the last thing is just the muscle definition on that punch. Wow, I love it. Wow.
It's fantastic. That's why we give you the nice, clean version of it on the back inside cover, so you can just enjoy it thoroughly.
Well, I do enjoy it thoroughly.
Do we have the artist name for this one?
Yes, it's Hugh Pinder.
Has he done a lot of work for you?
I know that he's done a few of the other art pieces, including some of the ones that I'm excited about showing off in the future. But yeah, he's done lots of great work. I've looked into some of the other pieces he's done. I know he was doing, I think he was doing some of the AP art for us. I don't remember if it's just the opener for Arctic or for the splash on the cover, but yeah, he's been doing other work for us as well. So check him out. Check out all of our freelancers too. That obviously, if you love this book, you're going to love their work and figure out what else they've done that you can look into.
Something else that surprised me is the introduction, because I was always more in favor of when the Player's Companion line was rebooted and introduction was really just a lot more bullet point and you got right into the crunch, whereas somewhere along the way it got... What's that? Where
you would get things like traits early on.
You would get traits. You would just get like, here, if you are playing this class, here are the things you need to know. Like, it would just be very like, let's just get right into this. Whereas the introductions came back and it's 2-page spread. That's a little bit of a slower introduction to the book. You know, it's a personal preference. I like the old way, but this is one of the introductions that I actually really, it grasped me right from the beginning of explaining like, here's what martial arts are. Here's implying game terms with martial arts, because martial arts has religious ties, it has combat ties, it has defensive ties. And so I was really engaged with this introduction, and normally I just skim them.
And I think that's one thing we've been, not to say that we don't always have more ideas for traits, but there have been a lot of introductions that have lots of traits, and we thought it'd be nice to give you a big rundown for how things fit in the world before we just throw an entire 30 pages of options at you.
So how did you decide how the sections would be broken down?
The various spreads, like
Yes.
unarmed experts and the like. The first big thing is we decided what we had collected our spaghetti, and then decided what the obvious categories were. So things like combat maneuvers feel like an obvious thing, and weapons, and then unarmed all feel like obvious things. But then from there, we decided what would be just interesting options to present. Some of this spaghetti that we collected just didn't have a very obvious spot, or wasn't enough to fill an entire section on its own. So then we would start coming up with ideas. For example, the flow and form section for the kineticist and the different what do they call it? Excuse me. The
Chi practitioners?
The chakra options. That all work together thematically, in that it's all from internal the body. Kineticist produces the elements from the body, so it felt right to put that all together. And then some of it was just, hey, we don't have cool combo feats. Let's come up with a section with all the cool combo feats.
The monk has been reinvented a couple of times. Once with Ultimate Combat kind of realizing that the monk needed more options, and it exploded with options at that point. And then it's got the Unchained version. So how do you find more material for the monk in a book like this?
Well, the first obvious thing is if you look at the Unchained Monk, there's been it's been around for a lot less time, so it's easy to just put in new style strikes or new options that they can take as a King Gong style. But from there, it's just it turns out creating options for monks it's really easy to just say, oh, also if you're an Unchained Monk, you can take this as well.
Really? It's
So,
easy? Things line up?
Yeah, a lot of the time it is. There's a few places for for example, an archetype where you might need to say, oh, this replaces this particular thing for a standard monk, and this replaces a different thing for the Unchained Monk. But for the most part, it's pretty easy to just line most things up. Every monk can take a normal feat or a style feat, regardless of the type of monk they are. So easy enough to just provide content that way.
You were giving your freelancers a lot of credit and you gave them flexibility, and then you were giving them credit for having really cool options. What are some of the more surprising options that they turned over?
I think the most surprising option was probably just how much I ended up loving the new grappling options.
Oh.
I just said, hey, provide new grappling options that don't just give you pluses to hit or pluses to succeed on that. And just Matt Morris wrote that section. He just ran with it and gave me back everything I've ever wanted. There's a reason why there's a luchador in that section. It's very much pro wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
It's very easy to make a pro wrestler with all the stuff here, and just really interesting stuff.
There's two luchadors. There's the first luchador, which looked awesome when I saw it, and it he's crouched down, he's ready to grapple, and then who he's ready to grapple is answered on the next 2-page spread in just the right position, which is the second luchador. And I thought that was brilliant, because we don't see a whole lot of. We usually see every time we see any sort of martial arts, it's almost always in the form of monk, because of core class, and also it's really hard to fit in monk flavor art where you can during the traditional fantasy artscapes. So cram them in when you get the chance, and then just to see these two luchador characters is just like, okay, that was brilliant. Thank you all very much for doing that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've been having a lot of fun with the art orders is just sneaking in little possible glimpses of Clarion, because it's very easy to just say, okay, here's Valeros, he's doing this thing. Okay, here's Ezra, and he's doing another thing. But it's more fun, at least personally to order art that says, hey, make this guy look like what maybe a fantasy version of a luchador from Arcadia would look like. And maybe then later in the future, if we need a fantasy version of a luchador from Arcadia, I can just point to this, say, hey, this is what they look like. You know, here you go, have fun, or make more art that looks like that.
What's his name?
He is El Cuadro.
Oh,
that's
all right.
He's based off. This is a little personal Easter egg of mine. He's based off one of the monsters I wrote a little while back, which is a Quaddle. It's called the Shoe Quaddle, which is in Adventure Path number 106. It's in the Hell's Vengeance Adventure Path Part 4, which is just another version of the Quaddle who has that same color motif of bright greens and reds and yellows, and that's what he's based off of there.
Cool. And the second luchador, is it a second? It's a totally different person, or is it supposed to be the same person?
It's a different person. And that one, I don't know if he has a name, but he's more Jaguar themed.
So, how come there's not like a whole section on luchadors, like just specifically luchadors of Clarion, 2 4-page spread?
I think it would be harder to sell that in the more generic book for, you know, hey, here's all the options for everyone. But if this does well enough and people want options like that, I am ready to deliver.
Are you a fan of luchadors, Luis?
Yes, I am a big fan of luchadors. In fact, I'm not the only big fan of luchadors here. Mike Sayre on the organized play team, he wrote a whole third-party product that is just a new base class to luchador. He's playing our Return of the right now.
I have that third-party product. It's the luchador is based on the Vigilante, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah, Vigilante monk.
Alternate class.
That's that is so perfect class.
It is.
It is really great. Wow. Okay.
Like, gosh, can I get a little wrestling nerdy?
Oh, please. Please, mark out all you want.
Kayfabe is dead, and kayfabe being the carny term for, like, people are no longer pretending that wrestling is real. Luchadors still do. Like, you try and find information about some of these people, and it's like, well, we know he's the son of this luchador with this luchador character name. We have no idea who these people really are. And there's 5 generations of this family of luchador, and it's somehow they have still kept this secret. And, like, the mask is just so important to that aspect of to lucha libre and the culture around it. It's exciting as someone who loves nerding out on like trivia and behind the scenes stuff to find out that there is nothing there. It's like, wow, like people have tried and even nerds like me cannot break this.
Yeah, people like El Santo being literally buried in their mask.
Was he? I didn't realize. Oh,
yes.
That just makes sense though.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, we're in a world where Lucha Underground is the second most popular wrestling federation in the world. Like, there's room for a 2-page spread, is what I'm saying, Luis.
That's the start of a potential book. Who knows? Maybe someday.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. This is making me want to boot up Fire Pro Wrestling again.
Really? I could not figure out how to play Fire Pro Wrestling.
You don't play Fire Pro Wrestling. You just screw around with the character creator and download things from Steam.
And then let all the CPUs play against each other and just enjoy the matches.
Okay, because I've been told that this is the apex of wrestling games, and I just cannot figure it out. And there's multiple editions of this game that I've tried, and I have never got it to work.
The new one on Steam is just downright perfect.
I'm pretty sure I've played it, and it's played me. I just show up and get beat up, and every now and then I do a move, and I'm like, what did I just do?
A quick aside regarding wrestling, I was running my second Legacy of Fire campaign, the second time through, and I got to the point where they were in the city and building it back up, and they decided to start like a big gladiatorial match. And what I did was I used my WWE game and built custom characters of the different individuals that were here, and then when we were having some downtime in the game, I'd put it on and I'd just have the CPUs wrestle. So the King of Pesh would wrestle, like a cultist of Rovagug and the like.
So now, were those characters within the world, or it was actually the king of... Well, no.
They were custom characters I made that represented the characters in the game.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I guess I just wanted this book to be the pro wrestlers of Clarion. Is that something that we can still get on the slate?
Talk to me in second.
I know the
edition.
answer is no, but I still wanted to say it.
I mean, if enough people want it.
I totally want more books about like the lives of Galarian that aren't adventuring, that adventurers can still participate in. And the pro wrestling circuit campaign would totally work for a campaign in Galarian.
We've joked about redoing all of War for the Crown as a big pro wrestling adventure path, where if you just replace nobles with managers and other villainous wrestlers, it works out pretty well.
Why didn't we think of this, Ryan? Why is our War for the Crown podcast?
Because this is dangerously close to a product I talked to somebody else about, and I cannot go into because it's mostly his idea.
Okay. Well,
so yeah, we have to move on from this. Other than this book makes me happy, not just as a wrestling fan, but as a Pathfinder fan. This is the Sergeant Slaughter of player companions, where it's two of my interests are meeting. And that is high praise for me, let me tell you.
Wow. Great. Thank you. What's your favorite bit from the book that's not a luchador or wrestling adjacent?
I mean, the cover, obviously.
Can we... I'm going to call out the shifter art, because I didn't expect the shifter style to exist, and it's super fun. But that art of the shifter, I'm going to pull it up on stream for people watching on YouTube or watching us live. But that art was just like, whoa, perfect.
Yeah, that one, I didn't give much direction for a lot of the stuff that I outlined here, but this one in particular was, hey, give me a shifter archetype that is based on the styles, because they're all animal themed, and give you different stuff based on what style you're in. And I also got to order that piece of art. So yeah, it's really cool.
Also, Param, can you call up the art on page 9?
Okay, the art on page 9. I can pull it up.
This is art that tells a story, and I have no idea what that story is.
Oh, okay. I'm pulling it up now.
Brawler is using an aquarium of exotic fish, which look like the Finding Nemo aquarium from the dentist office, and using it as an improvised weapon.
Yep.
Is the Finding Nemo reference intentional?
It looks like it's Finding Nemo. That's not anything we asked. We just said, hey, give us some fish. Make sure the puffer fish looks scared.
Okay, so the puffer fish was important. For those of you listening to the audio right now, you have the Brawler just lifting up this stone fish tank, and this puffer fish is terrified for its life and blown up full.
All right, Luis, I'm sorry. I cannot narrow down to some of my favorites.
That means we've done our job.
Plus another book. Yeah, no, there are several characters that I would like to play out of this book.
I have a question. A lot of these sort of make sense, and then there's a lot of surprising styles. Why the gunslinger? Like, where did that conversation come from?
You ever heard of gun fu?
I have heard of gun fu.
If you've seen The Matrix or like where they leap around firing guns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, the Black Powder Vaulter is the name of that gunslinger archetype we're talking about. Mm-hmm. That is the most interested I've been in the gunslinger. It's kind of like the shot on the, like, it forces you to move around and take your shots, which is not what I'm expecting. It also forces you to be a lot more close ranged than most gunslingers, and the play style is what interests me there. I'm not a big gun fu fan, but just like reading it codified for Pathfinder, it just opens up that class for me in a way that I wasn't expecting.
Mm-hmm. I also like the art piece on this one because the guns are plant guns.
Yeah, that's great. That's our artist at work, just having fun with we just said, hey, here's an elf. She's leaping backwards and firing 2 guns. Have fun with it.
Yeah, and like I'm wondering, does this thing fire acorns? It's like the most. Is this like? Is she like the most deadliest chipmunk ever?
All right, Luis, any final things before we move on from the martial arts combat?
I'm a big fan of the art for the Quintain at the very end, in the equipment section. It's a little knight that you would practice with. He's just a cute little guy. Looks like a friendly little face.
I'm zoomed in on it. Okay. Oh, little smile face on it.
31.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm working off of a black and white copy, so I did not realize he was smiling. He reminds me of, I forget which fighting game it was, but if you go in practice mode, you fought Spanky, who was just like a fighting dummy with a yellow smile painted on him. And Spanky's the most memorable character from that game, which I kind of not even remember the title.
And I'm also excited to be able to give people the hand wraps for the monk, which is something I wanted for a long time in that same section. Just it's about time, I feel.
All right, so what is it about the hand wraps that you felt that?
Well, it's as a monk or someone who uses unarmed strikes, the way you would enchant your attacks would be to buy Amulet of Natural Weapons, which is significantly more costly compared to just a +1 weapon. And
also takes up a valuable slot.
Next slot, yeah. So it's easy to just, hey, wrap your hands and then pay the cost to enchant these. Done. Easy. Your hands are ready to go.
And there's one other book that you worked on recently that I want to do a deep dive into.
Worked on a lot of books recently, but yes.
I know, but there's one more that I want to do a deep dive into. You got to take the full sentence.
I brought them all.
Well, I don't have them all, Luis.
I even have ones that aren't out yet.
Ooh, what was that?
Face of Galarian, but I'll talk to you about that in a bit.
Face of Clarion, is that campaign setting line?
Yeah, next to the campaign setting line, which I think I mentioned last time I was on. I just couldn't talk much about it because it wasn't ready to go, but it's going out to subscribers right now, so I feel okay talking about that if need be.
All right, well, I'm going to queue up its product page because we are going to actually let's switch gears and we'll go to that, and then we will talk about the Construct Handbook, which is where we'll settle things. So there are a lot of faith-based books. What makes this one different?
Like we are doing with Heroes of Galarian, this one decides to branch out from the Inner Sea.
It decides?
Yes. That's how divine this book is. We're detailing a lot of the gods that we've mentioned before, such as the racial gods for dwarves and elves, but never really gave any info on. So we have 10 different gods, and some of these we have one for a gnome, one for half elves, and one for dwarves, and then we hit up a few different places around Clarion. We actually have 3 gods from Tian Sha, and then 1 god from other major continents except Saracen, which is still very mysterious. But if you've read Inner Sea Fates, where we went and covered some of the lesser known deities, it's very similar format where we give you a lot of information about their church and their priests and their aphorisms and festivals and the like, and give you some obediences to use for rules options.
So Inner Sea Faiths I remember enjoying quite a bit, but wasn't... Oh, no, wait. I might be thinking of Races of Clarion. No, okay. Never mind. I withdraw my comment.
Okay.
Interview is over. Param, save me.
Okay. So you mentioned Saracen. So what makes some of the faiths in Saracen different from the traditional faiths that we're used to in the Inner Sea?
That I don't know. We don't talk about Saracen at all here. It's one of those places that's mysterious and not many people know about it, and who knows if there's even people there, and it's been that way for 10 years. And I think it's kind of fun to kind of leave it open for whatever you need to do. Here's this big empty area for you to kind of have fun with.
Okay. So when you said that it's a similar format to Fates of not Fates of Clarion, but Inner Sea Faiths, is it so much so that basically if you could just smush the books together, it would still feel like one continuous book?
Yeah, it would still be one big book. It uses the same, like, pretty much all the same headers and the exact same format and style. And the only difference is just, hey, it has the borders that are a little different. But other than that, if you threw all the text together, it would be just one giant book.
All right, Luis, this is why I like you. Because you say so many things that it's like, these are the things that I like and I cannot rationalize why I like them. Like, if there is it's been several years since Inner Sea Fates came out, so you may have developed a superior way of presenting it, but the fact that you went with a consistent way of presenting it makes me happy. I want that consistency in my books that are supposed to be in the same line, And I've never been able to explain why consistent is better than better, and yet it is for me.
I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what they say.
Oh my gosh, I think... Okay, so while you all... I went ahead and grabbed this, because we weren't expecting to talk about this today, so I went ahead and grabbed the PDF, and I think Grandmother Spider might be my new favorite deity ever.
Yes.
Grandmother Spider.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up on screen. You need to see this 2-page display. Well, just this one particular picture.
So some of the gods in here have had at least just a name drop here and there. Grandmother Spider is basically whole cloth brand new, but was kind of rumored, just bouncing around for a while. Just never had a chance to get put in anywhere. Crystal Fraser wrote that. Good old Crystal. Love her very much. So yeah, she is our main Garundi god this time around, and very much a trickster, kind of Anansi style if you think about that. But you know, with her own fantasy bent. For example, she's Achikek's sister.
Yeah, I have
Mantis god.
I have some art pulled up, and it's the first half pager where she's just like stealing some keys from. Is that supposed to be Asmodeus?
Yeah, that's Asmodeus.
Okay, so just like stealing keys from Asmodeus and replacing them with a ring of junk.
So I was expecting a Madame Web type, mostly humanoid with some spider elements. This is just flat out a giant spider.
she does have a more humanoid form that we present in the artwork a little down the line there.
This mission just called for full spider.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the priest. Oh my god, you have to see the priest.
You have to show me the priest.
Okay, hold on. That's the wrong thing.
I love this presentation of Asmodeus.
There's just this tiny little colorful jumping spider.
He looks very Disney villain style. He looks like a Disney villain to me in terms of just the presentation.
He does. He looks like if Asmodeus was Gaston.
Oh my gosh. Well, he is now forever in my headcanon. That's how I'm going to RP Asmodeus. So I pull up the image of the little priest, which is this tiny little multicolored jumping spider just weaving this intricate web in front of it.
Aww. It's adorable.
You have made spiders adorable, Luis. Your team has knocked it out of the park.
Again, they thank all our awesome artists for that. Also, this book was more of Eleanor's. It was more in Eleanor's care than mine. I definitely helped. She was making sure that
everything I said about liking you, I like Eleanor. I don't like you, Luis.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
What is Grandmother Spider's alignment?
Chaotic neutral, I believe.
Yes, that's exactly what I was hoping for.
Or no, she's neutral. Sorry,
pure neutral.
Oh, true neutral, really?
Yeah.
And I have her pulled up her human form, which is 6
Her head's
arms.
cut off in the framing.
Oh, I fixed it when the stream catches up to you.
Well then, I'll just wait for the stream to catch up to me.
Yeah, because I messed up the first time. Darn it.
So Asom90 says she's attempting to release Rovagug. Is that what those keys are?
Maybe.
Wow.
Oh, she calls a Starfinder.
I like that she's got the 8 dreads. That's a nice touch.
Yep. All right. So obviously we haven't read this one. We haven't read in advance. So mine and Ryan's contribution is just going to be endless pokings of Luis. Anything else in this?
Awesome.
Anything else in this book you really want to call attention to?
I really like right after Grandmother Spider is Gruhasta. He's our Vudrani god, and he is Irori's nephew. And he's also very much about enlightenment and perfection, but through education and learning.
Oh,
and he's just really interesting. And the other few I want to call out to are Tien gods, which are Heifeng, Shizuru, and Sukiya. And Heifeng and Shizuru were written by Leanne Merciel, who wrote the Night Class novel and a few of the other novels. And John Compton wrote Sukiyo, and they all just really, really awesome representations of really interesting gods that I think people appreciate. For example, Shizuru is a literal god that is a dragon. Just a dragon.
Someone's got to be, right? At some point, a dragon has to ascend. Now, are these detailed at all in the Dragon Empire books?
In that they had their domains, their alignment, their favorite weapon, and then a little tiny couple sentence blurb.
Okay,
there.
so
they've expanded upon them.
Nice.
So I highly recommend checking that book out if you like cool, cute little spiders. I'm sure you'll find other stuff you like in there.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I have a lot of faith-based books that I'll pick up and then leave off to the side, but I've enjoyed the little snippets that we've had of this book more than I have some of the books that I've bought and owned for a long time. Not that they're bad books, I just don't tend to use those options, but I do tend to like those books. All right, I think I am going to pick up Faiths of Clarion, which is not something I was expecting to do, at least not in a timely manner.
See, that was secretly the whole point of this podcast. Luis is scamming you into buying one book.
Param, I think maybe in January we can review some of the books that we're talking about here, because like, as much as we've talked about Martial Arts Handbook and are about to talk about Construct Handbook, these aren't reviews. These are excited interviews, conversations of compliments. So yeah, let's keep this in mind that we should return to some of these, give them proper full reviews in the near future. But for now, Construct Handbook.
Yeah, Construct Handbook starts off like I expected this book to start off, and then just goes completely sideways in a good way. I did not expect this to be one of the coolest bestiaries I own.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's about 60% bestiary, right?
Something like that.
So
starts on page 20.
Like the best way
40 pages of bestiary.
Yeah, the best way I can describe it is it starts off about the pace as if this was a player companion of, oh, these are about the character options, and then page 18 happens, and then it turns into 40 pages of ridiculously awesome bestiary.
So why don't we talk about, this has kind of got a bit of a rocky history. So how did you get involved in this book?
In two different ways, actually. I actually freelanced for this book before I started with Paizo. So some of those monsters in that bestiary are mine that I hope that you liked. But what happened is just the nature of, at the time, having a smaller team makes it so it's this book happened to fall by the wayside for a bit and just didn't have anyone championing it and getting it through the entire editorial process. So when I came on, day one, it says, Adam Daigle says, hey, why don't you develop some of this Construct book that we need to catch up on? So I got to work on that, and all the monsters were already developed, but I got to develop the first, the options for the book. So it took a while to get there, but once Eleanor and I were here, we were able to help bring that book to the finish line.
And was the intent that this was going to be some mix of a player companion type book and a bestiary?
The intent was to provide, it's a campaign setting book, and a lot of the times campaign setting books aren't necessarily player facing first. GMs tend to use those a lot more, or at least that's kind of the way we give them, we pitch them to people. But some of these options, it's just if you are a GM that you're running a construct heavy adventure campaign, or running Iron Gods, for example, sometimes your players will need these specific options to work better along in those kind of adventures. So that's why we presented a good chunk of those options here for you.
Now, as somebody who never paid too much attention to the construct creation rules from the bestiary, and the bestiary is where they're introduced, right? Or are they in the player companion? Not the player companion, the core rulebook?
They're in the bestiary, but they're broken up between the craft construct feat, and then the golems have their own thing and things. It's kind of all over the place.
So is this mostly just a collection and cleaning that up, or does it really expand on those rules?
The base rules as to how to craft a construct, that is all just, here's a big thorough explanation that's all collected in one nice little place for you. But then from there, we did expand on other options. For example, the construct modifications, those originally showed up in Ultimate Magic, where you could add extra spells to a construct that you make by paying the cost, or maybe eventually wear them as armor. We just decided, hey, let's expand on those and get a few more of those options there. But for the most part, beyond that, it's all brand new stuff, beyond the little introduction at the beginning to get you up to speed on how to craft a construct.
And I appreciate that. I know that there's been some debates over reused content over the last few hardcover books, but there's a satisfying way and kind of a frustrating way to do that, and this is definitely the satisfying way because it just makes my job easier as someone who might want to use these rules.
And we've done something like that before, I believe, with Aquatic Adventures. It's just, here's all the swimming rules, all here for you. Just make it nice and easy.
I'll have to take your word for it. I just try and stay as far away from the water. So the archetypes. The archetype section, I liked for a lot of the same reasons I like the martial arts handbook, in that it's not just the classes you'd think are building and interacting with constructs. You've got a fighter archetype in there. Rather intriguing one, actually. And a lot of non-casters make the cut, or maybe then, a lot of non-casters make the cut. So what was the thought going into the options that should fit into this section?
Again, the thought was, if you're going to be part of a campaign that's construct heavy, you might not have the tools available to do as best as you can, or you would like to do as a player. So we figured we'd give you those options. We tend to do that kind of thing in a lot of our themed books. If there's a particular theme, we'll give you options that fit those themes. Like Ultimate Intrigue have lots more intrigue and espionage-based options. Even though you could technically do that with your base fighter or base paladin or base wizard, it's a lot easier when you have the options here presented to you to kind of do some of the heavy lifting or the thinking for you. It's like, oh, yeah, that's easy. That I can just take that without having to scour every spell to figure out what's the sneaky spell and every feat that will help me be super sneaky or super diplomatic or whatever you might need.
And you mentioned that the campaign setting line is not always player focused or player facing. These archetypes most of them feel like they're completely viable options for any player character.
Yeah, well, they're not all. The campaign setting books aren't all player facing, but when we can, we want to make sure as many people as possible can make use of those options or would want to use those options. So some of these might not be the most optimal thing that you would want to take, but it's definitely something that we would hope that you would consider taking in a situation where you're like, oh, hey, constructs are coming. Maybe I want this Tinker archetype for the wizard or for the Arcanist instead. Just enough to at least give you a chance to think about it, rather than just saying, oh, hey, that's the construct book. That's all the GM NPCs that he's going to make, and that's all we're going to fight is just the construct-based thing. No, we want to make sure everyone at least considers these options that we make.
I really appreciate the Scrapper fighter archetype where you're just dressing up in dead constructs.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. And that's another thing we try to do is just not make it, okay, here's the fighter and he gets a construct buddy. Now here's the rogue and she gets a construct buddy. Now here's the paladin and she gets a construct buddy. We wanted to have a nice mix of just different ways of how a player would interact with a construct. I think the one that I particularly like is the bard archetype, where you can bring them back to life by playing cool music.
I'm pretty sure I've seen rock videos about that. So then we go into magic items. Param, any thoughts on the magic items?
No, I was distracted too much by the cool robots.
So I like the golem manuals, but that feels more need-based than trying to do anything cool and exciting. Is there anything in the magic items that you think we should have paid more attention to?
I mean, I do like being able to rip out a robot's eye and then using it to shoot lasers at people with the Oculus.
Okay, fair enough. Shooting lasers is always the best option when it's available.
And I think
the best laser eye in the book, though.
No, that's true. There's also the diadem of control where you can just, oh, hey, I want to pilot this robot, slap it on, and now I take over the robot, and I'm in the robot. Cool, great, perfect.
And what's good about that is often what you will see in media that involves constructs. It'll be, we're not trying to defeat it, or maybe even we can't defeat it, so let's try and control it. Let's try and disable it more from an engineering or mechanicals point of view, and like mind control on constructs is also something you see constantly in media. Then we get to the constructs. 40 solid pages of new constructs.
Mm-hmm.
So don't take this the wrong way, but why?
so some of this book was outlined when I wasn't here, so I can't say exactly here, but I know that it's just more options for people. We throw in a bunch of templates to let GMs customize their constructs. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of iron golems at this time, or wooden golems this time, and just being able to mix that up is really helpful.
Well, I'm going to go straight to the end then, because there's the Soulbound Construct.
Yeah,
it's one where you get a little human soul just kind of added as a ball, and he takes control of it. And the idea of having like a leader construct by just slapping that template on one of many of the same, that completely rewrites how I would run a construct encounter. So that's a simple template that is construct exclusive. Sorry, not a simple template in the mechanical terms, but it's an easy to apply template for me as a GM that I really like what it would bring to an encounter. And like I could base several sessions, I can base an entire adventure around just that and following up on that Soulbound. Soul binding, Soulstone.
I also like that it's the return of my favorite construct, the Annihilator Robot, also known as the Chain Gun Scorpion.
So we start off with the automatons. Is there something specific about an automaton that's separate from what other constructs are?
Yes. First, I wrote the automatons.
All right. Tell us about your creation.
So the automatons are... We have lots of constructs in the game, but this was our chance to kind of put in the intelligent ones that might be the reason an entire campaign happens. If you make a construct, it's very easy to just, oh, here it is. It follows its programming. Let's speed it up and destroy it. Okay, done. But these constructs, they're basically the souls of people in a way, not exactly the way a Soulbound archetype, but people that have kind of downloaded their brains and souls into these frames that are the automatons. So they have ties way far back to the Jiska Imperium in the setting. And they're just another interesting way to present them, in that they have intelligence, they plan, they strategize, and they know how to get you best. So that's why we have the greatest warriors of all time download themselves and become the champions, or the greatest hunters of all time download themselves and become the stalkers and the like.
I also want to focus a little bit on the art here, because most of the constructs in here are, robot-like. So there's some that are the constructs that are made of other material, but most of them are robot-like. The automatons have their own feel, which I think is really important. And it's not a Numeria feel, and it's not the other construct feel. And they don't fit into Starfinder. Like, these are definitely Pathfinder fantasy constructs, but different from any other constructs that are similar in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, I got to see the artwork when I was assigned the freelance work. So the art actually inspired a lot of the ideas that I ended up using for some of these things. For example, the Stalker one that looks like a predatory cat has lots of interesting colors on it, and that's what inspired the idea. But it has camouflage that constantly shifts and changes to help it hide among its different environments.
Do you know if its aesthetic is supposed to be evoking something?
I don't know if there's anything in particular. I think this is just our artists having some fun with, hey, give us some cool robots. I know that it does remind me a lot of, there's a recent video game, Horizon Zero Dawn, where there's lots of animal-like robots, dinosaur robots and elk robots and the like. But it's not exactly like that. It's just, these robots, the automatons in particular, feel like they're adjacent to a lot of different types of constructs, but not, they're still their own thing.
Yeah, I do like that you all did a great job of evoking like this unifying art style, and that the Stalker automaton, which is like this giant predatory cat robot, is really just a blown up version of the little kitty familiar automaton. Like, you could just see that little familiar talking something. I am a killer. I am a sneaky robot.
I alluded to another laser eye. Or the Clockwork Goblin can set fire with his eyes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it must do all the time then, because Goblin, right?
Yeah, you figure that when a goblin is thinking of a robot, it's like, he's exactly like a goblin. He's got a dog slicer. He's everything like a goblin, but he has fire eyes. I like his CR. I like that this would never be the boss of an encounter, but if I'm doing a goblin heavy campaign, or if I'm running something that is like, hey, there's goblins again, and my players maybe have gone through Rune Lords and we're looking for something different, throw in a Clockwork Goblin. It is a different kind of challenge. It is still on theme, but mechanically it will play out very differently. And yeah, Laser Eyes.
Yeah, Laser Eyes. Love them every time.
Was there any more thought into what a Clockwork Goblin should be beyond let's make a Clockwork Goblin?
No, some of these are just one of the secrets, not so secrets, of some of our bestiaries and the like is just sometimes, hey, there's some gaps between CRs for certain types of creatures. Let's fill those in. So some of these are, hey, we need to set CR7 Clockwork. Let's come up with a cool idea and what would fit around that range. So just sometimes it's, hey, we want to see Clockwork Goblin. That'll be fun. Robot Goblin.
All right, I'm starting to feel more like I'm in review mode. So let's go back into what are some of the highlights for you in the this section. What are some of the things that surprised you?
I'm a big fan of the Steamwork Dragon.
Oh yeah. Okay, let me pull that art. Let me pull that art up for it, because I imagine many of us that participated in famous popular Kickstarters has just the perfect mini for this.
Yes, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, that one in particular, the art just is super cool. But the idea of, Clarion very much feels like a world where the steam engine is just on the cusp of being created. So some kind of age or scientist presenting, hey, look, I've created this thing, and both the reaction of horror and awe that this would elicit in Galarian, which is great. Mm-hmm. And I think Vanessa wrote that one, from what I remember.
Really?
Yes.
Nice. So now, like, I know that there has been a construct dragon in Pathfinder before. This is new. This isn't reused content.
It actually uses the Clockwork Dragon for Bestiary 3 and applies the steam powered template that she created here.
Oh, okay. It's the template that's new. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, like, when you've got this many constructs, like this many of the same topic that has very rigid mechanics to it, so how do you diversify the content of this section?
Well, it's very easy to explain that. Well, this robot or this construct has a laser built into its eyes, and this one has, a freeze beam built into its arm. It's just very easy to mix and match as one would with a construct, just any ability, and just explain it that, oh, someone built this thing into it and someone built this other thing into it. It's very fun to, and then try to represent that both mechanically and visually through the art. It's always kind of fun. So hey, someone put a soul into this construct. Okay, yeah, sure, let's go with that.
Is that how the adamantium chainsaw came into being?
Yeah, hey, let's give a robot a chainsaw. Why not? Robots don't have enough chainsaw. Let's give them more. In fact, let's give them a chainsaw and a buzzsaw to make up for lost time.
Mm. And we're talking about the Gladiator robot, CR17, for those of you curious at home. It has both of those things, plus a hypersonic rifle, because a normal rifle wouldn't be nearly as fun.
Then you'd only be CR15.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So now I want to talk about the haunted construct, because I know that when it comes to monster design, there's the idea that you should pick a lane, that you really shouldn't be blending two different types. So this feels like it could have been an undead type creature, but it is still straight up a construct. So how do you go about presenting something like this that really could go one of two very different ways?
Well, I think had this been an undead book, it would have been the haunted construct in the undead book that happens to be an undead book. It just so happened to end up in this book of all places. But it's, I think, makes a more interesting story overall. The idea of, for example, a spirit hopping between construct to construct to construct, than just, oh, this construct was animated by a ghost. Okay, that's all it would be, as opposed to, here's this ghost going around. Just the presentation from the construct angle as opposed to the undead angle, I think, is just a more interesting approach for that.
We are going on or close to an hour and a half now, and I know that you were willing to sit in on the news section. Is there anything else you want to talk about the Construct Handbook before we wrap up this interview?
I think it's just grab whatever construct you think is cool and make sure your players fight it over and over until they get tired of it.
Why aren't there more Transformers references in here, Luis?
There's a little thing called copyright law, and I won't get into it.
You guys aren't good with Hasbro right now?
Well, I think we are good with Hasbro, and we want to stay that way.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. I'll have to make my own Transformer constructs.
Yes, please.
And I'll call them Construct.
How come nobody ever asked why there aren't any more GoBots references in games?
Yeah, because GoBots are Transformers now. Hasbro owns it all.
Yeah, that's a weird state of being.
Is it? The big guy eats the little guy? That's a pretty common state of being.
The big guy eats the little guy, and there are hundreds of transforming robot series out there that many of them predate Transformers, especially some of the ones that were combined to make the Transformers exist. Most of those don't still get their brand plastered on toys occasionally, even though they got et. And Hasbro occasionally does release a GoBot toy, which is usually just the kid-friendly version of a Transformer, but the brand name usually dies, and there's no reason on earth that that brand should still exist.
Well, it's still a talking point. Anyway, this is this is a conversation for another time. Unless, Luis, do you want to weigh in? Transformers versus GoBots? Why are GoBots still a thing?
I'm good.
GoBots had the better.
What if we talk about Rocklord GoBots anymore? So normally at this point, I would invite you to shout out to anything that you are, just ways people can get in contact with you, things that are exciting you. But are you willing to hang out for the rest of the episode?
Yeah, let's hang out.
All right, then we'll do all shout outs at the end. So we will be right back with the news right after this.
And we're back.
In the Pathfinder news section, we talk about things that are happening related to the Pathfinder role-playing game, Pathfinder as campaign setting, just things in general that would be of interest and are newsworthy to the Pathfinder fan, the Pathfinder enthusiast.
Mm-hmm.
The big news, although there's not a whole lot we can talk about it, is that Pathfinder the Playtest, which was coined by Luis in chat a few weeks ago. The Playtest is closed. The playtest, the second edition playtest is closed. Surveys are still open. Things are being compiled. We don't have any information on what the next step is, only that this step is done, and now it's like a compilation in-between period.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of posts. I noticed that the Order of the Amber Die just finished their 7th and final session that went up as a blog post. We know that the official playtest stream from Paizo, that thing wrapped up. And we're seeing a lot of, we're finishing part 7 of the playtest from various groups that participated in that. So lots of hurrah and pomp and circumstance.
Now, I did speak to Jason Bowman at Pax Unplugged briefly about some things related to the Pathfinder playtest, and effectively he was saying that people can expect a lot of changes, that things were kind of pushed to the extreme when they were playtesting it, something which we've heard before, but I think the context that he was talking about when we were talking about it, it's essentially like if you take your favorite recipe and then you substitute each ingredient, ultimately it doesn't taste like your favorite recipe anymore. And so they're going to see, they feel like, oh, maybe we did a little bit too much substitution all in one batch. So people will be surprised just how different second edition will be from both first edition and from the playtest.
I'm super curious. I mean, we have said before that the release version of Pathfinder is substantially different from the beta and alpha versions that were the beta and alpha went in much more extreme directions with some of the classes. Like the fighter's completely different, and the wizard was even more powerful in the beta because Pathfinder needed more powerful wizards evidently, and that got reined back in. And then the sorcerer got super cool with bloodlines in the end. But that's very minor compared to the changes that we were seeing in the second edition playtest that was being proposed. I mean, in a lot of ways, it was a complete ground-up new game that still very much had Pathfinder roots, but like even the core engine was being swapped out, and you had resonance and so many extreme options that nothing was sacred. Everything was potentially a change point. And where they kept saying they were going to extremes, it was not just where you're substituting all the ingredients, but one of these ingredients is Lysol.
Luis, is there anything that you can weigh in on this? I know that you've been asked not to talk about the playtest as a Paizo employee, but now that it's done, has a gag order been released? Is there anything you can weigh in on?
Well, I mean, I've also been playtesting myself, even outside of the office.
You were my first playtest GM.
That's true. Yes. Lucky guy. Got the preview. Yeah, I've been having a good amount of fun in some of my games. In some of my games, it's obvious, hey, I'm testing a game. So sometimes that isn't always as fun as someone would like. But I think I've been able to contribute a lot of feedback. And I've seen some of the planned changes. I think there's some stuff I'm excited for. And I'm just happy that we've received as much feedback as we have, because I think it's been very helpful. Just we get constant updates on how the game's looking, or what the design team is looking to do going forward, and some of the even my personal issues with the game have been addressed just based on the feedback that they've gotten or that we've been able to provide. So I'm looking forward to the state of the game next year.
I'm curious about you said that the amount of feedback, was this like an avalanche of feedback compared to like previous playtests that the company's gone through?
That I don't know for sure, but I just know we have been getting constant feedback, and it sounds like, based on what the design team has explained to us, there's just always been a good constant flow of feedback throughout the playtest, and enough that they've been able to make well-informed decisions based on survey data and things like that.
Now, my write-in was to get rid of magic. Is that going to happen?
I think if you spam the surveys quickly enough, you might be able to have the team consider maybe looking at your surveys.
Way ahead of you.
Now I need to find out something that Costello loves and kill it.
Oh, no. Is there any schedule on when we can expect some announcements, previews, some idea of what second edition is going to look like?
That I don't know. We haven't been told that. So I know that there's probably going to be some nice big wrap up thing at the end of the year, or start of the next year, that says, oh, you know, the survey or the play test is done officially. Here's what to look forward to and things like that. But I couldn't tell you what's coming there.
Yeah. I'm really interested. I mean, I guess obviously we're super interested in On Edge to find out, like, well, what was this be? Because it really could go in so many different directions, because it did go so extreme in so many of the different directions. I mean, there's a version of this game that I really don't think they're going to go down. But like, just as extreme as they went, there's a version of this game where it is closer to fiasco than Dungeons and Dragons, and I would still believe that was within the realm of possibility as to the extent of the changes that were proposed. But of course, the opposite is true. So it's like everything seemed to be on the table, and like some of the narrative choices and the hero points and stuff, that seems like very new age design compared to some of the more classic design that we've seen, like the 3.5 era hold to.
This is not the only playtest news.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Yes! Okay, so we're going to go like deep dive into this on the next episode of No Direction Beyond. So look forward to that. And then we're not going to do that here. But the Starfinder has got a new playtest out for 3 new classes. One is, of course, the Vanguard, which is a melee specialist that is defense and buff oriented, and also with the Vanguard comes the concepts of shields in space, because Starfinder hasn't had shields, so now we have shields in space, because of course space shields need to exist.
Starfinder doesn't have any shields?
No, not until this book coming out. The Command Operations Manual, is that the right?
Character Operations
Manual. The COM. Is the first time we're going to get shields, and it's really elegant. I like how they're doing it, proposing it, that shields, you get a shield bonus, but it basically acts like a cover bonus and does not stack with cover. So you either get cover or a shield, because they're doing the same thing, putting a physical object between you and danger. and that's how they're balancing it to keep the math from exploding in Starfinder, because there's a version of this where you take cover with a shield and just snap out the little hole, and that would be way too overpowered for Starfinder's math. Then the Vanguard is that class. The other class is the Biohacker, because if you have all this alien nonsense out there, maybe splash some of that into yourself and modify your body to take the best that science and mad science has to offer. That
does not sound like a good idea. I know you're saying it like, well, obviously.
Well, we're talking about
genes that are just sitting out there in space.
Yeah. I mean, I want lungs and I want space wings, and I want tentacles for arms. Yeah,
space wings.
Space wings are awesome. Space wings have existed since Alien Archive 1, and they have space fairies, and they have space wings and sniper rifles, because of course they do, because Starfinder is this insane amalgamation of every wildest Paizo dream, with all the restrictions just taken off. Like, the shackles are off, go nuts, guys. And then Starfinder is what you get when that happens. And then the final class, which is probably the one everyone's most excited about, and because the name kind of says it all, the class gameplay totally matches it, but it's the Witch Warper, which is it's like a very control-y caster that just messes with like the basic fabric of reality, and it's so the visual and the fantasy of that class tie in, and for a lot of ways it kind of helps fill in the gap that Starfinder had, that the Technomancer really wasn't quite the pure caster everybody was hoping it could be, because it really is more of a magus than it was a wizard, and the Witch Warper definitely leans hard into that pure caster archetype as well.
What about the name? I am surprised it's the Witch Warper and not just the Warper.
I think that because they want it to be fantasy based, and they want to evoke certain imagery, that not having the word witch there would be a disservice for this.
So how is the playtest going to run? What are the dates?
The playtest is a 6-week playtest. Let me see this.
I think it's going until January 16th, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So until January 16th, you can go to starfinderplaytest.com and download the thing right now. There is also going to be Starfinder Society versions of this playtest, and they're doing it a unique way there. Instead of just create, like it has been in previous playtests, create a character and play test it using the playtest rules, and then you'll have to replace those rules with the final rules when it comes out. They have a bunch of pre-gens made for these characters that you can play during Starfinder Society, and so especially because it's only going to be a very brief window, just from now until January 16th. To get that in. And so again, we'll be going super deep dive into it in a week from now on our No Direction Beyond, our Starfinder focused podcast. But go check it out, starfinderplaytest.com. It's all completely free download, because all of the playtest materials are, and check it out. It's exciting, and there's no reason not to check it out.
Luis, you made a face that says actually.
Well, I believe from what I recall, the way it works with Starfinder Society is you get to make a 1st level version, a 4th level version, and a 7th level version, like the pre-gens are, but it's build your own pre-gen.
Oh,
the idea is we need you to go have fun with this and be wacky and play this character how you want, and then give us the feedback that way. Because if everyone is playing the exact same build, then you only get specific data. But I think you're kind of locked in. You can either play the 1st, 4th, or 7th level version, or whatever the level ranges are.
Because I was going to say this would be an interesting way to play test the pre-gens, since having my only Starfinder experience was playing a pre-generated Clarion.
Oh,
just
no.
Like I didn't get the class.
You didn't. I mean, I love the team, but the Starfinder Solarian is kind of the joke of the whole society. It tried to be too much. It reached for too much greatness and fell short.
The pre-gen specifically, right?
Yeah,
Not
the pre-gen. The
class.
Solarian is fantastic. I love the Solarian. When you build a right Solarian, you can do some insane amounts of damage. Like the Solarian is one of the kings of damage of Starfinder, and they get to do that either one of two ways. They can be both the best melee going, and they can be both the best ranged going, depending on your build. And they're very fun. They're a very fun class to play.
Is there anything else from this book that's going to be involved in this playtest?
Not that I've seen. It seems to just be those options and shields, and because Vanguard needs shields. Yeah,
Three classes and shields. That's what we're playtesting.
Hey, that's an important concept, man. Like, you know, space shields is going to alter the concept of the game. Especially, it makes sense for the melee to have space shields because Starfinder's math was based on the concept of having cover. So if you don't, it was meant to evoke that whole Mass Effect kind of feel. Like the very first thing when combat breaks out, you need to find cover. That needs to be active. You need to either drop down on the ground, go find a park bench, get around a corner, do something to get your character cover, so that you get that bonus to your AC. And if you don't have cover, you're really at a disadvantage when it really evokes that whole shootout feel. And then melee characters always had the problem in Starfinder where they just get hit all the time because they have to basically charge at the things with the laser guns, which makes them both the thing that the people with laser guns want to shoot because they're in their face with a giant axe that shoots fire, which is very cool melee weapon. And they don't have cover AC, so they're getting hit a lot more often. So that's kind of like the worst of both worlds. So the joke with melee and Starfinder is melee has to be brought back from the dead every single combat because they just get taken down because they all the fire goes to the melee. They don't have the AC to back it up. And now that shields are an option, it means that you can bring the cover with you, get that added to your bonus. So this is going to be a shift in the gameplay.
I guess I just assumed in a game with powered armor, shields aren't going to be as important as you're making them out to be.
Well, power armor's great, but power armor like sucks batteries and is super expensive.
Armor, what I understand.
Oh, well, you can also have power armor, and that's cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was powered armor.
You can get powered armor that I thought it was power armor, but you can get power armor that is like a tree. You can get like magic tree power armor that lets you teleport.
And a shield.
And a shield! I wonder if the shields can be a tree. And can the shield teleport?
All right, I feel like I'm being sassy about a game I don't play, so I'm going to lay off the shields. If you're telling me that they play an important mechanical, this really does revolutionize Starfinder, or at least the melee side of it, then I will believe you.
It is an exciting option because, like I said, the melee just really needed some boost in staying alive.
Oh, and Alex confirms in chat that I'm right. It's powered armor.
Oh, no, goodness.
I just remember Rob McCreary very specifically enunciating that word whenever he was talking about it at PaizoCon last year. And so I was assuming it was either a copyright thing or just to stand out a little bit more why it was called powered armor instead of power armor.
Yeah. And again, as Alex is screaming at me in live chat, expect a much more detailed, a much more accurate, and full-on geek out a week from now during No Direction Beyond. So totally tune in for that episode. Please tune in for that episode.
Is the plan to have anyone from the design team on, or is it going to be...
That's a complicated question, and I don't have an answer for that.
Fair enough. People can watch our Facebook page for the announcement.
Mm-hmm.
The last bit of news is PAX Unplugged was this past weekend. I've got some stories from it, but as far as news breaking or anything, Param, I feel like you have a little more insight into some of the cool things that were going on as an outsider who didn't even attend than I did as somebody who was there.
Okay, so I don't have like a super... first thing, I know a few things. One, Keyforge evidently is the new hotness that ever existed and is selling out like crazy.
That's true.
And it had a humongous showing at Unplugged, and also my local game store cannot keep copies on the shelf. And secondly,
do you want to go into what Keyforge does at all?
It is it's Richard Garfield's new CCG or LCG. It's the new game that he's created. It's a card game. I have no concept of how it plays or what makes it special. I just know that you can't have a copy right now, and that's.
the way it works is they have a computer with an algorithm that generates random decks that in theory should all be viable against each other, but every pack you buy is a brand new random deck.
Oh, with a name that are evocative and often absurd.
with unique names and unique mechanics. So you don't buy booster packs, you just buy new decks, and you don't mix and match cards within decks. You just have the deck that you bought. So you can spend $10, get a new deck. Okay, this deck plays this way. Okay, I guess this is what I'll use here. Oh, well, my opponent is using this other deck that plays another way. Well, good thing I bought this other deck that kind of maybe works against that. So you don't mix and match cards like you would with Magic or other collectible card games. You just mix and match what deck you're using at a particular time.
That's so weird and potentially awesome.
And the art's cool. And yeah, I first heard about it a few months ago on ICV2, and it's just continued to go up and up as far as the attention it's getting and the reviews it's getting. It definitely is something that if you are looking for something a little bit more involved than a board game, because it is going to have competitive leagues, stuff like that. It's like picture Magic the Gathering without a lot of the baggage of Magic the Gathering. It's a
easy
fresh
to buy
start.
in.
Yeah, it's a chance to get in at the ground floor of Magic the Gathering, the new Magic the Gathering.
Mm-hmm. All right. The other thing is that there were many fantastic panels at PAX Unplugged, and that's kind of where like my interest has been in that. And so, and because I can't be there, right? I was not able to be at PAX Unplugged. I really wish I was. It sounded like it was the place to be this year. Maybe even above Gen Con as the place to be.
Wow, that is not the impression I got from the sales room floor.
Okay, so from the panels at least, they were much more interesting than the ones I was seeing at Gen Con. And a lot of those recordings and YouTube postings of those are starting to come out. Like there was, okay, Queer's a Three-Sided Die had a panel there, and you might recognize that as something we host usually every year, but we haven't hosted it the last couple of years because they have accommodated their own recording now without our volunteer efforts, and obviously we haven't even had time to do that because of continual escalation of our content coverage of Paizo panels. So they had a fantastic panel this year. There was a lot of like minority and trans topics in gaming also had panels. There's an interesting panel with on the similar topic called not having racism in your campaign, why you should just abandon the concept. And it's just a great thought exercise as to, you know, just because things exist in the real world doesn't mean we need to emulate them in our fantasy worlds. Just they have just like a lot more, the panels here just sort of go in some more wild places, where at Gen Con we get a lot of 101 introduction to topic panels, and this is like kind of like to cast it in a different light, if it would be like the kind of panels you would see at like GDC, Games Developer Conference, where it's like very specific topics taken to their to much more deep conclusions that fit just the concept of, here is a broad level concept of that we're going to talk about of how you make a campaign world. And then if you go to enough of those panels or listen to enough of those panels at Gen Con, they become the same talk like 10 times in a row. Here's what it's like to world build, and these are the same 3 points we told you last year is about to world build. So it's kind of great to see a lot of panels that go into like more specific nuanced topics, and that an experienced person in the industry or in role playing can actually gain some knowledge on beyond just the intro panels. I have begun to collect those panels as they're posted on YouTube, and I've started up a playlist on my own YouTube channel, and I will find some way to get that out to our audience soon as I collect them. So if you're interested in some of the PAX Unplugged 2018 things, or at least the ones I found interesting enough, you'll be able to find a nice little one link to view those all.
I would say that I am interested in those. I didn't hear anything about the panels until I got back and you were telling me about all these cool panels that you wish you had been to. So yeah, I'm glad somebody else picked up the slack and did some recordings, because I didn't even think to try and assemble a con team or anything. I even had my recorders on me just because they're part of my con gear, but I didn't even think to see if there was anyone that was going to them and was willing to ask to see if we can get a recorder on the table.
Mm-hmm. Like, when would you have had time, man? You were like all the pictures I ever see of you at these cons when you're repping is like, here's Orphans and Ashes, and here's me working the booth, and here's me doing my super charisma thing.
All right. Well, keep in mind, this was my first gaming con post Board Game Bento, so I felt like I had a lot more to do, or I had a lot less occupying my time this year. Not that I would have gone during my Blind Ferret time, but like before and after, I could have definitely arranged for pick up and drop off a recorder. Plus, the con starts at 10, which just feels great as an exhibitor. It's just like, I could stay up late and sleep in. Like, this is the dream. It goes 10 till 6 every day. It's only a 3-day con, so Sundays go a little long. Last couple of hours of Sunday were pretty dead, but otherwise, those hours really worked for me.
I am definitely putting this con high up on my list to consider for next year, especially because it's another con that's within driving distance for me.
How far is it from you?
7 hours.
Okay.
So it's about the same as going to Gen Con.
So from the exhibitor side, it felt a little slower than last year. At first, I thought that they had doubled in size as far as the exhibit room floor. And then I realized they just swapped the free player area and the exhibit hall, and it was basically the same size. And one of the problems, if you're a booth like mine, where we've only got a few different games to show you, is that there's a lot of cycling of the same people going through the exhibit hall because they're just between things. And you can do the entire exhibit hall as an attendee. And so it's like, hey, we've shown you this game. Now just come and say hi because we don't have anything new to show you. You already saw everything we have to offer. Whereas some of the bigger ones were cycling through, like, today we're demoing these 5 games. Come back tomorrow, we're demoing 5 completely different games, which was definitely the smart way to do it. But I know that last year there was the complaint that this was a very savvy crowd. And so people would sit down at a booth, demo a game, get up, go on Amazon on their phone at the booth and buy it for a much lower cost. And that's one of the areas that my booth benefits from being a smaller guy. We're not on Amazon. We're not in distribution. You sit down, like our game, and you want to buy it from us. Or buy it from our web store and pay the same price plus shipping. So that's a very aggressive selling point. But yeah, so PAX Unplugged, I'm surprised that you got such a positive impression of it because the impression from my point of view was a lot more mixed.
I've never heard the concept of a savvy crowd being used as a negative before, but I can totally see it. Like for people that are there to generate booths. But then again, the concept in my brain of like an Amazon sale being a bad thing is also kind of like breaks my brain. But I totally see the logic there.
Well, because Amazon is big enough that they can ignore things like the minimum MSRP. Like, there was even articles about it that Black Friday, Amazon was just like, oh, we're not legally allowed to sell it this cheap. Meh. Oh. And actually, that was another thing. This was right after Black Friday, whereas last year it was earlier in November. And so I don't know how much disposable income the people that were attending had. So people showed up not really, like, they had just done a lot of shopping for themselves. So unless they came with a shopping agenda for Christmas, they were mostly there browsing and just taking in the gaming experience. I think that the gaming areas had higher energy than the exhibit hall this year. And so PAX Unplugged, just from my point of view, I'm going to pay a lot more attention to where it falls on which side of American Thanksgiving.
Do we know next year's dates?
I can look that up. I'm not sure.
Okay. So usually, like, when you've got a unique perspective here as a vendor on that side of the fence for these things, whereas I'm usually, my point of view where these cons are like, well, what's the gaming like, what's the shopping like, and of course what the panels are like, and so things that are a bad thing for you might be a good thing from my angle. It's just like, oh, all this gaming and all these panels, that's fantastic. But I guess if the companies
that's
aren't
not bad stuff. It's not a bad thing for me. It's just not something I have access to.
Right.
And so if that's where all the buzz is, I'm just missing it.
Right. But then again, if it's not attractive for the companies to show up, then there's nobody speaking at these panels, and then the games aren't going to be there to be played, and you have to make the vendors happy. Man, I'm glad I don't run cons.
It's at a size that it's like I'm seeing a lot of people that I know from the game industry, and so it's like, but I'm not seeing everybody. It's not like Gen Con, but it's like a chunk of the people I see at Gen Con. So it's like I'm expecting, oh, maybe I'll hang out with Owen here, that kind of thing. So I hope that it continues to grow and that it can be something that rivals Gen Con, because right now I was expecting more growth between year 1 and year 2. Especially with the PAX name attached to it.
Gen Con needs a competitor. I mean, I love Gen Con to death, but it needs a competitor.
Yeah, because Origins has some of that baggage we were just talking about. It has been around for so long that it's just not. It means so many things to so many different people, most of which it's not anymore, and that's good and bad.
Yeah. And then Dragon Con has completely shifted its priorities as well. It's not anywhere close to being a competitor there anymore.
I do have one cool Pax Unplugged story.
What is it?
Well, as I've discussed on Adventurous, usually in those chatting sessions that don't make it into the episode, so if people haven't ever watched us live, we do have about 10 minutes of conversation between episodes. And I've mentioned a couple of times that I base Xavier, at least visually, on pro wrestler Tyler Breeze. And on the first day of the con, I see somebody that I swear is Tyler Breeze, except he's grown a beard, and it's like, I mean, he's smaller than me, but he's a smaller wrestler. But that really looks like Tyler Breeze, and I was trying to figure it out with Will. And then, like 5 minutes later, we see Ember Moon, who is definitely Ember Moon. Like, Ember Moon's gimmick is basically that she is a nerd living the nerd power fantasy as a pro wrestler. So, like, her character has werewolf elements to her design, but not like she's actually pretending to be a werewolf, just like she thinks werewolves are cool and is playing someone who likes werewolves. She's got a complicated character, which is good because that has not always been the case of the women on the roster. So anyway, I see her. It's like, that is definitely her. I go to her Twitter account. She's renamed herself Ember Moon at Pax Unplugged. So it's like, there's a very good chance that was Tyler Breeze. I would love to actually tell this guy, I made a Dungeons and Dragons effectively, because I didn't know if he knew Pathfinder. I made a character based on you. And the next day he was at the booth right across from me. And I'm like, I have to take this opportunity. I was in the middle of a demo, but I got excused from it so that I could go. I saw his handlers were hanging by. I was like, so what's this? Like, do I have to get permission from you? And they're like, no, but thanks for asking. That's nice. So I went up to him and I was like, Tyler Breeze, if you have a minute, I just kind of have a really nerdy story for you. I based a Pathfinder character on you. My bard, Xavier Sever XS, is you. And he's looking at me and he's like, oh, is that the whole story? I'm like, yeah, I guess. He was apparently expecting a much nerdier story than I gave him. But then, we chatted a little bit. He's a cool guy. He's very much a normal person, which is not the character he's playing. The character he's playing is very much an exaggerated, cocky male model type character. And I got the impression he was just there because he likes gaming things. So that was fun.
Awesome.
I have like a suite of, if I ever see this celebrity, this is the story I will tell them. Mm-hmm. And Tyler Breeze is the first person that I actually got to tell my story to.
How many other celebrities do you have?
Oh. What's that, Luis?
How many other celebrities are on that list?
At least 4.
Ooh.
The most fun story is how Stone Cold Steve Austin taught my ex-girlfriend's parrot to say what.
What?
I like that you get it. If you don't know wrestling, you have no idea what. But yeah, I hope to one day tell Stone Cold Steve Austin that story. Sorry, go ahead, Param.
Okay, so I had it in my mind that like Steve Austin had actually physically met this parrot, and this was like some joke.
No, it was at one point because like wrestlers are taught basically promo cadence, and so you say a couple of words, dramatic pause. Say a couple of words, dramatic pause, and he started saying "what" during those dramatic pauses as though he didn't understand or wasn't paying attention to the guy, and this got over huge. People were chanting it. Like basically Austin 316 is what he was known for, but what is kind of his legacy, or at least it was for a long time. He was retired for 10 years, and audiences were still saying what during those pauses in the cadence.
On the last SmackDown.
What happened?
People were saying what on the last SmackDown?
Oh, I thought it had died.
No, it's still going strong.
So anyway, yeah, I started seeing a girl with a parrot. I tried to introduce her to wrestling, and then just one Tuesday morning, it's like, what? Did you say what? All right. The other fun thing about this parrot is that it could perfectly mimic the phone ring. Almost perfectly. It never knew exactly how long to ring, so it would just be like, it would trill, and then we would know that it wasn't long enough, so it was the bird, but we would have guests over, and they would be like, aren't you going to answer the phone? It's like, oh, it's the parrot. Although sometimes she got us. Anyway, Pam, moving on.
I don't have anything else to move on to.
Okay, so the other thing about PAX Unplugged is that we part of the table was dedicated to bannerless builds. Greg got to bring his stuff there, and we were taking pre-orders at the table, but mostly we were just showing off our stuff, and people loved bannerless builds. Like, as much as the positive feedback we were getting from the influencers we sent samples to and the people who were checking us on Kickstarter, the positive feedback Greg was getting from people who were seeing it in public was super encouraging to him, because this is really his first project that he's putting out there. I guess at this point it's old hand for me. Plus, I think I've got a thicker skin than Greg does. So, like, for him to have just 3 solid days of people excited by his stuff, coming over to it, telling him they think it's cool, letting him tell them why it's cool, that was really nice to see. Just as somebody who knows Greg and watching Greg in that.
Yeah, I've been paying attention to his socials, and he not only the pack stuff, but he started showing off like some prototypes of some like dungeon versions of bannerless builds, in which that's kind of the part where I'm more excited about. Like the city stuff was kind of cool and great, but I think that the dungeon stuff will get more use, and I kind of hope that, like, this concept is cool, and I kind of hope it gets a chance to grow to its full potential, and we have dungeons and forests and sewers and caves and all the cool stuff.
Yeah, so he was showing off prototypes of dungeons and mine shafts at
mine shafts. I didn't think about mine shafts. Mine shafts are cool.
So the dungeon, he's taken a lot of the feedback of designing the mold so that it can be double-sided. So he's got the one that's more generic dungeon and one that's more exotic dungeon, and that's the same facade. It's just how you flip it. But the mine shaft is super cool because he's got a modular piece that makes it a collapsed mine shaft, and it fits in seamlessly. And just seeing people react to him using these foam pieces that fit together so perfectly, that got like the biggest pop at the booth.
Yep.
I'm really stuck in wrestling terms tonight. I've shifted gears.
This is the night to do it.
Are we ready to wrap things up?
I think we are.
We transitioning, or are we just going to start saying goodbye?
Let's go ahead and start saying goodbye.
Thank you for joining us for episode 189.
I'm going to say sure. I've lost count, especially correct, as we've expanded to podcast numbers I can't count on one finger or one hand.
Thank you for joining us for episode 189 of No Direction, the News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Before we go, maybe there's stuff that we want to shout out to. I don't have anything this time. Param, do you?
I want to shout out to the Return of Adventurous. We've had 2 episodes now go live. One just went live yesterday or today, this morning, and if you're listening to this live, it was a few days ago, and the Season's Beatings will have come out since then. So you'll have also a Season's Beatings shout out, which we have. Luis, you're part of Season's Beatings.
Yes.
How you enjoying Season's Beatings?
I'm having a fun time, except for the fact that Alex took all my stuff.
Yeah. So it was not fair. Alex makes us build these incredibly bad,
pretty awesome characters.
Yeah, awesome characters. I built this gigantic. I wanted to play off type. I usually play like rogues or more often wizards and occasional paladins, but things that are just like sly and skillful and stuff. So no, I'm going to build the beefiest beef stick of a barbarian ever, and I build this mountain of a dude, this bear of a dude. And I described it to Alex as such, which is why I suspect he did what he did to me. Just like gigantic bear of a barbarian with this gigantic gigantic freaking sword. I'm like very Amiri inspired. And the build was just like this combat blender, which thankfully I get to still be the combat blender. And then, like, at the end of the first session, as part of the adventure, is we all get turned into kids because we all get abducted by Krampus. Because this is a holiday Christmas special thing. And my character wakes up in bear pajamas with a candy cane for a sword. And then, Luis, you're familiar.
He's a toy now. He's a stuffed little owl.
Since you brought up Krampus, I should point out today is December 5th, which is the night of Krampusnacht, which is the night that Krampus takes the kids and puts them in his bag.
Wonderful. I'm going to be paranoid for the rest of the night. Thank you, Alex.
You've been a good boy.
No comment.
I am going to jump on your plug for Adventurous. We've got 2 episodes out, 2 more in the can. And this is a cool string of episodes, the last 2 recordings we did. We enter into this new area. We explore it over the next few episodes, but every episode is kind of self-contained in that we're dealing with one specific problem or one problem and then start the introduction of the next problem. I liked it. Like, just editing the episode 14, which just went up, I realized just how, like, solid this was as an episode. It really starts with what we're dealing with that episode, and it lasts for the entire episode.
And the tension for these last few episodes was super high. I mean, there were parts of it where we were seriously wondering whether or not Adventurous would have to be rebooted to a different campaign.
Well, because we started with a tank.
Yes.
You know, Ari's paladin, Vincenza, was not a traditional paladin, but she was still a frontline warrior, which we definitely needed because we all made characters that are diplomats first and combat capable second. And then we lose our tank, our frontline fighter. And the first string of encounters were basically like, this is the things before hiatus, where it's like, we talk our way into the warehouse. We talk our way into the bad guy's chamber. Like, we managed to get past a whole bunch of encounters because we're talkers. And then this episode, or the last week's episode, episode 13, is the start of, and now we're in a situation we can't talk our way out of. And we are not great at fighting our way out of things.
It is so terrible. It's like, and Lauren, I love her character to death, but she is like, of all of us, the rest of us still have some combat capability. And then Lauren is just like, I'm a baker, sneaky person. In this combat's fighting, I'm gone. Back on. I can't fight. I'm gone.
Luis, is there anything you'd like to bring people's attention to?
Yes. It definitely is. I'm wrapping up my writing for Adventure Path number 143, Born by the Sun's Grace. Thank you. A bit behind, but I'm glad that I'm finishing up here. That will be part 5 of Tyrant's Grasp Adventure Path, which I believe that particular volume will be out in June. I won't say much, one, because I can't, but also it's more fun that way. It goes to a unique part of the world, and if you want more information, you can check the product page on the Paizo store to see what. It's more fun if you don't spoil yourself, though, but I'm really excited to have people check that out.
And this is your first Adventure Path, right?
What's that?
This is your first Adventure Path?
Yeah, it's my first and only contribution to the first edition Adventure Path, but I managed to get in just in time. Awesome. Yeah, and yeah, I'm excited for people to get that in their hands.
I thought I'd cut you off saying something.
Oh, it's like Luis gets to write the penultimate Adventure Path.
Yes, it's the penultimate Adventure Path for first edition.
And where can people find out more about you?
Various different places. I'm frequenting the Paizo message boards to help answer your questions about hand wraps or luchadors or whatever you need. I'm also on Twitter at Donato Classic. I'm sure we can throw a link somewhere at some point. I also happen to contribute for a cool blog called NoDirectionPodcast.com.
That's our blog. That's us.
And
he's talking about us.
Yay!
lots of wonderful blogs every day on nodirectionpodcast.com. I happen to be writing one every Friday where I get you new monsters. And yeah, just check out my monsters there. I like making monsters, and so much so that I just make one every week, I guess.
Yeah, I look forward to your blog every Friday. It's always so much fun.
We haven't talked about this. At one point, you were doing encounters alternating with monsters, and then it wasn't official alternate. It would just be sometimes. It's been a while. Like, is this just something you just rather make monsters?
What happened is, well, monsters, I've been doing them for so long and doing so many. I can throw a monster together, what I consider a decent monster in my book, in about an hour, at least the stats, and then work on the flavor and description from there. But drawing a whole map and then coming up with encounters for it takes a lot longer. Especially, I could definitely just use like, hey, I have a notebook and I sketched a map together. Here you go. I scanned it in. But I am a perfectionist to a certain degree, and I want my maps to look great and people to get excited about these maps. So it wasn't putting out the work that was up to my own standards. I'm like, oh, I'll just do monsters. I feel comfortable with doing those. If people wanted encounters, they could definitely try doing those again, but they wouldn't be as regular as monsters.
People like your monsters.
There we go. I'll keep making monsters that I hope people like.
Karen, where can people find out more about us?
Well, you can do so at nodirectionpodcast.com, where you'll find all of our podcasts, both our actual plays and our news, interviews, and review show, such as No Direction, No Direction Beyond, and Geek Together, also a fun podcast you need to check out. We don't give Geek Together the love it deserves.
Should do a wrestling Geek Together sometime, right?
I did a wrestling Geek Together with Ian Davidson from the his podcast, the Talk Without Rhythm podcast.
That's such a great podcast name.
It is a great podcast name. Yeah. And it's not a wrestling podcast, so he was also out of his element, but talking about something that really interested him.
So you all should do a luchador Geek Together.
Ooh.
The only luchador I know well is El Generico. Actually, no, that's not true. I've watched enough Lucha Underground. A little more up to... Anyway, yes, this is all possible.
Also, if you want to join the most chill and friendly Pathfinder Starfinder community, you can do so on our Discord. Seriously, join the Discord. It's an amazing community. You will love it there. You can find the link at nodirectionpodcast.com. I cannot tell you the link because Discord links are a giant random jumble of letters. But go to nodirectionpodcast.com. There's a gigantic blue Discord button on the side. Click it. Join our Discord. We would love to have you there. It's a great way to catch up with other fans of the show, other Starfinder fans, other Pathfinder fans, and of course all the network members, and just chat with us throughout the week. And also occasionally we solicit content from there. It's like, we really need some questions, we really need some ideas. It's a great way to participate with the network and the community. Please do that. They're also on our Facebook page, facebook.com/nodirection, at youtube.com/nodirectionshow, at twitter.twitter.com/nodirection. And am I forgetting anything, Ryan?
The Patreon?
That's your goal. Patreon. Go, Ryan. Yeah.
All right. Go to patreon.com/nodirection. I think that's it.
Yeah. Well, we thank our Patreon backers, because it's only through your generous contributions that our expanded content has been possible. We appreciate each and every one of you. Well, you dropped the ball, Ryan. You didn't thank them.
I just needed to double check the URL, but yes, all right, I did drop the ball. Yes, if you go to if you go to patreon.com/nodirection, or there is a link on the nodirectionpodcast.com website, you can see our Patreon. If you, like our many friends, want to back the show, we've got a couple of cool rewards for you, including the unconditioned cards. We just got the sketch for Kathy's unconditioned card. I don't know if we officially announced this yet.
We didn't. But
yeah, we kind of wanted to go in order of people that have been on the network, and Kathy has been on the network forever. She's kind of this under the radar. She was on the Private Sanctuary podcast as a co-host for years. But at the time when No Direction had become the flagship, she was on Geek Together the majority of the time, even though it was supposed to be something where I had a rotating co-host every time. It just became like, I just want to talk to Kathy about stuff. And now she's on Adventurous, so I felt it was time that Kathy got her fair share. She's got her share of fans, and now she's going to get her unconditioned card, which, just based on the sketch, which doesn't have any details of her face or anything, but like Chris M. Kimball, it's Chris L. Kimball, isn't it? It's
Yes.
a Chris Kimball. Yes, Chris L. Kimball, who I got to meet at PAX. Oh, I should say that. Man is huge, and all of his friends are huge. I was the smallest one in the bunch, and he came with like 6 friends.
That is unbelievable because you are a mountain
I know.
of a man,
I knew
Ryan.
he was tall. I just had no idea that he hung out exclusively with tall people. Yeah, he toned over the Kathy sketch. She was super excited. So we got him a couple of notes, and he's going to give us a more detailed preview soon. We don't preview these yet. We won't be sharing them publicly. But by the time it gets to either the black and white or the color version, we will put it up on the Patreon so that our patrons can see what unconditioned card they can expect.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then more unconditioned cards to come of other awesome cast members. They are hilarious, and we hope you enjoy them.
Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perrin.
And thank you to Luis for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to find the path, you need no direction.